Hello and welcome to R&R's Ask the Expert. I'm Kayla McGowan, editor-in-chief, and today we're diving into a unique road from the unknown to making a difference in people's lives every single day. Sounds vague, right? But listening to the story from AJ and Becky will put things into perspective. AJ and Becky, a husband and wife team from Louisiana, are dedicated to improving home building, maintenance, and air quality. They have 25 years in HVAC and construction. AJ overcame epilepsy caused by mold toxicity, leading to a career shift toward the safer, healthier home. With experience in hospitality, healthcare, and sustainable development, Becky expanded her expertise in health-focused real estate and indoor air quality. Becky plays a role in education and advocacy for indoor air quality as assistant program coordinator for a nonprofit Change the Air Foundation. Together, AJ and Becky use their combined expertise to promote better building practices and help families create healthier living environments for them. Please welcome Becky and AJ.
Hey,
Hi,
Kayla.
hello. Thank you
Thanks
for
for having
having us.
Yes, thank you guys for joining me. I know this has been so anticipated on our end. We've been talking for quite some time, and I really want to just take a second to really tell your guys' story and spread awareness about the importance of our jobs and what we do every single day for our consumers. So, really quickly, cool to see a husband and wife duo, right? I know that makes for an interesting dynamic. How did you guys get started in this journey? I kind of touched on it briefly, but let's really dive into the nitty-gritty.
How did you get started?
So, I typically tell people that I was actually born and raised in the industry. And when I say the industry, I mean the HVAC specifically. And my dad did some construction houses as well. But it actually goes back to my grandparents who were real estate developers. And then my dad owned and operated, and still to this day in South Louisiana owns and operates a HVAC company. So I'm the oldest of two children, and AJ came along. I have a sister, so no boys. AJ came along in high school. I fell in love, and he kind of decided like he was going to partner up and work with my dad, and it's just developed into this whole thing, which
It's been a whirlwind to say the least.
yeah, totally. It's not, growing up, like, no, I didn't have aspirations to like be a real estate developer or work in HVAC. Like I actually was going to go into the health industry, and then I went the whole hospitality route because I'm Southern and I love to plan parties. But God had other plans, and really it's become a part of who we are and our passion. It's what we do every single day now.
Yeah, I
So,
think it's great to hear that you grew up in the industry and like I was not dreaming to be here, right? My dreams were somewhere else. And for AJ too, I'm sure you had other dreams and aspirations, but when you meet the love of your life, the course of life quickly changes, right? So AJ, have anything to add to that?
yeah, so I started, like Becky said, right out of high school with her dad. Um, I didn't really like the HVAC industry. I kind of hated it. It was a very, very hot, miserable, physically demanding job. But I came to a point in that time and I said, this is what I'm going to do the rest of my life. I need to get serious with it. So I started to get serious. I started training. I started to do a lot of educational stuff. And I started to get better and better and better and learn more and more and more. It's kind of most of the HVAC contractors, myself included, I focused on the box, the AC unit itself. Like we never ever thought about the house. The AC system isn't cooling, go in and fix it and move on and get the house cooling. We never once thought about the house.
Or the occupants, the
Right.
health of the occupants. It was they're hot,
Always.
they're miserable. We're in South Louisiana. There was rarely, I feel like, conversations about humidity or moisture. It was just like it's either working or it's not
Yeah.
working.
So throughout the journey, long story short, we ended up losing a child. We had another child, my daughter. We moved to a new city and Becky and I started our own HVAC company in another little town not far away from where we grew up. And once again, we were focused on the box. I was very good at what we did. We did really, really good work. We did elite level work, in my opinion. However, we focused on that box, not realizing the effects that box actually has on the house. It wasn't until I actually started to have seizures, extremely long story. I developed epilepsy from exposure to microbial growth day in and day out. I tell people, ask me how many systems I've opened up in 25 years that has no level of microbial growth. Every single one of them has some level of
Zero.
microbial growth in it, with the exception of a brand new system. And even with brand new systems, within the first year, I can find some microbial growth in it. So, needless to say, I was exposed day in and day out. And then the older they get, the worse they get. And I was just in there day in and day out, tearing this stuff out. We work our rear ends off with complete disregard to our own health. And I suffered the consequences of it, the severe consequences of it. I developed epilepsy. Towards the end, I was having 10 seizures a day. I could not function. I was having seizures in front of clients, falling through ceilings. So, needless to say, we had to get out of the business. It was an extremely difficult decision that we really couldn't make. We feel like the Lord sold our business. We basically had a colleague reach out to us and said, "Hey, how you doing? We heard you're having some issues. We're interested in buying the company." And so we said, "Yeah, let's make this happen." Within a week, it was sold. Throughout the process, I was actually down for about 3 years. Throughout that process, I was exposed to building science and how the built environment actually affects our health. And from that point on, that was a pivot in my career and Becky's career that, well, goodness, we actually have to look beyond the AC system and look at the impacts of the house. The AC system in the house drives a lot of what happens in that structure that people do not realize.
Yeah, and just to kind of elaborate on this just a little bit, I think you really said without saying the importance of every sub industry of the services need to understand what one another does and the
Yeah,
exposures that they have risks for, right? I think a
yeah,
lot of times, like roofing is separate from restoration, restoration separate from cleaning, HVAC
yeah.
is separate,
Nobody communicates.
right? And
The
that's
the house,
scary.
the house, the house is a system. Everything in that house has an effect on something else, whether the person working on it wants to realize it or not. For example, when a plumber comes into a house and he drills a hole through a wall, that is going to create an air pathway that's going to induce a pressure differential. Something's going to happen. Air is going to move through that pathway, and there's a potential you're going to get microbial growth, moisture building up in a place that the plumber had no clue.
Right.
He was completely absent-minded. It never crossed his mind. And same thing with electrical, roofing, every single part of it, every single trade, everybody that touches that house, including the homeowner, the people that live in it, they play some dynamic role in the conditions of that house.
Well, I would say too, to your point for homeowners too, and even the plumber, electrical, there's an opportunity to actually not realize what's behind the wall, right? I know I've
Yeah,
heard a lot of stories where there's actually mold inside of the wall, and something like that, simply just drilling a hole changes the path of the environment exponentially. And I think with
yeah,
homeowners, a lot of people like to DIY. One, it's cost effective, they learn new skills, but there's a hidden danger in that as well. And just going back into your journey, 25 years, you were essentially exposed to mold on a daily basis, right?
yeah,
Um, let's kind of just talk about that a little bit, especially for your wife and daughter, right? You come home, and then there was a situation in your home where your wife and your daughter were not sick or affected, but you were. It kind of maybe it enhanced or magnified the exposure for you. Can you guys kind of talk about that and what really led you guys to the findings of mold being in your home?
you want to elaborate on
Yeah, so like you said, our daughter and I, we obviously lived in the same house as AJ, and we will get to how we discovered the mold in our house, but we had mold here and Maylee and I were never affected. And part of when I shared this story, like what I tell people is if AJ wouldn't live here with us, like the mold would still be here. And really like again, you don't to provide healing from these journeys, you sometimes you have unanswered questions and you have to have a peace about that. But I mean, AJ continued even after stopping working for 12 plus months, close to 16, 18 months. He hadn't worked and he was still having symptoms. And the functional medicine doctor that we were working with, he was so adamant about like, he's still being exposed somewhere, like it's got to be in you all's house. And so that caused us to continue to dig, even though we were adamant about there's no way that it's in our house. So really, AJ's exposure like goes back to probably when he was an adolescent. And I tell people again, like the first house AJ and I had as a married couple, so like 19, 20 years old,
It was pretty
we
tough.
we lived in his great grandparents' mobile home. This mobile home they bought brand new, like in the 70s, like 60s or 70s. Like they bought this mobile home brand new. And I feel like every single person in his family lived in it at some point. So when we got married, like it became available for us to live in. And that was like our first real home together. Well, we literally had to close off the front bedroom. We closed the door and we never went in there because they had mushrooms growing on the carpet. Like
Gosh.
we've been exposed to some really nasty stuff, like even outside of working in it. So, as AJ mentioned, we sold our business in 2019. It was June of 2019. In July of that year, like we obviously had time at this point, we had some additional resources, and we had seen we had already seen like every single neurologist in our area, like from Baton Rouge, Louisiana, all the way to our hometown, New Orleans, like some pretty significant specialists who specialize in epilepsy. And every single one of them made the same suggestion. Every single one of them ran the same test, saw the same, results. And they all said that because AJ has tried, more than six medications, a combination of these medications, that the only solution for him would be to have brain surgery. And it was going to be to remove that portion of the temporal lobe that was having the seizures. So, and again, they made it seem so like positive, so not complicated, like, oh, this is your answer. Like, this is what you need to do. And by the way, like, don't do it here in Louisiana. You need to go to the Mayo Clinic and have the operation done there because that's their expertise. So AJ's a really big, like he said, while he didn't graduate from high school and he hasn't been to official university, he is all about education. He's constantly taking trainings, constantly learning and growing and teaching himself. And also, has mentorships and surrounds himself with people who are highly educated and know a lot more than we do. Like that's super, super important to both of us. So he was researching like every single day. Any kind of way you could put it in Google or whatever search engine to try to find a match to what explained the symptoms that he was experiencing. He was trying to find it because again, we felt super lost. We didn't know where to turn at this point because we didn't want him to have brain surgery. So he comes across, and again, it kind of makes me giggle, like until 2019, we didn't even know about functional medicine. We didn't know what functional medicine was, like none of that. And again, like we were pretty healthy people then, like we ate really good organic food, all this stuff, but it just, even in a short time as 2019, just in our community and for us as individuals, it wasn't spoken about. So he comes to me one day and he says, "Hey, like we need to look into this functional medicine." He said they get to the root cause of what's going on. And that's what I need. Like I need to find out what is causing this. The doctors, that was part of our decision as to why we didn't want him to have brain surgery, was because none of them could tell us why he was having the seizures, like what caused the seizures to come on, because he wasn't born with epilepsy. He didn't have a head injury. He didn't have a tumor or lesions on the brain. There was no explanation as to why this was happening. And pretty much the doctors couldn't give us any answers. One doctor told us, "Oh, well, we may not know that until he dies and we could do an autopsy on his brain." And so again, you're like, no, like this is not okay. This is not an okay course of action for us. So he finds functional medicine. We happen to have a functional medicine physician in our community. So we went to see him. We were with him from July 2019 until December of that same year. And again, it's so odd to me. He obviously knew AJ's work history. He has been born and raised in Louisiana. Like we live, like we have a swamp in our backyard. Like AJ and I, like he grew up in the swamp. Like we're around moisture. We're around, organic growth outside. Um, Obviously, like buildings get affected down here severely compared to other climate zones. He never once mentioned mold. He never said, like, hey, you might want to explore mold. Like, I think we need to go there. Never mentioned it. So, in December of 2019, AJ kind of thought he might have Lyme disease and something might be connected with that. He had had an encounter with a tick. So, we went to the doctor and said, hey, we would like to explore Lyme disease. Do you think you can help with that? And he said, no, I don't really know enough to be able to treat you holistically or functionally. Go see this doctor on the South Shore who's been specially trained, and he probably will be able to help you. So we go down to the New Orleans area and we see a physician there, a functional medicine doctor. And he says to us, the very first thing he said was, based on your work history alone and based on the fact that you've been born and raised in South Louisiana, he said, I want to test you for mold. And that was the first time that we were like, again, AJ started researching, and that's part of what he shares is that at that point in the journey, when he researched like mold connected to the symptoms that he was having, like it hit the nail on the head. Every single thing that he was experiencing could be tied back to mold exposure or high levels of mycotoxins in the body. And so it all made sense at that point. Like it was like, okay, we have some answers and let's do whatever we have to do and get him better. So very naively, like we thought AJ was a really, really compliant patient. So we thought, okay, 6 months of detox, like we'll be fine. The doctor said probably more like 18 months. And yeah, so we went through the detox process and needless to say, like along this journey, AJ had changed out all of our HVAC equipment and duct work. So we knew that that portion of our home was clean. We also, again, we've never flooded where we live. We've never had a bulk water issue. We've never had a roof leak, any pipes burst, anything like that. So once the HVAC was completed and we knew that the air was good, um, we felt really certain about things. And again, we had professional cleaners come in and do things after the work was done with the HVAC. And we also invested in, and when I say invest, because we spent like more than $5,000 in mold testing. We do live in a state where, right, like there are rules and regulations and legislation in place where you do have to hire separate people, which we're in support of all of that. So the mold tester, who again is like an expert witness in New Orleans, like he is the who's who if you are having a mold issue and you need to have litigation, like we hired the best. He came in and he tested the house and he said, like, we have a clean house. Like he said in the top 5% clean of houses that he sees that are contaminated. So as the doctor, Dr. Joe Mather, as he's questioning, because again, AJ is improving a little, but not in the manner that we would think based on the fact that he's no longer working and the house is what we think is clean. So Dr. Joe is saying like, no, like I still think there's something in the house. He gets on the phone with the tester. Like at this point, the tester is like wanting to avoid us because he's like, folks, I'm telling y'all, like your house is clean.
Yeah.
So to kind of wrap up this portion, we called somebody who was close, like he happens to live close in our area, in our community. Like he lives a couple streets away from us. He's the mold remediator, because again, we were at wits end, we didn't know where else to turn. And functional medicine doctors, he's worked with a lot of their patients and stuff, so he came recommended.
We had no exposure to building science.
Right, none.
So that never even came up as a possibility or anything like that.
Yeah. So we called Lloyd, who's our mold remediator guy, and he said, legally, all I can do is tell you that I can come in and do a visual moisture inspection. And so part of this story that I've left out is when AJ was changing out the AC, we have a bonus room above our garage. So there's some knee wall assemblies in there. And again, when you're dealing with epilepsy and active seizures, memory is a huge issue, especially AJ was experiencing seizures in the left temporal lobe. So that's like where all of our memories are housed. So memory is kind of a thing that he had battled at that time. but he remembered at some point and he mentioned it to me. So we told Lloyd at some point a piece of insulation fell, from that knee wall assembly when he was in the attic. And he said that he saw some kind of black specks on it. But at the time, like that was normal to him. Like he said, like
Mhm.
I've seen that all the time. Like I just didn't think anything of it. And I put the insulation back and moved on to what I was doing. So Lloyd specifically went in and investigated that area of our home, and sure enough, he took photos of every single one and he removed every single piece of insulation and said they are all contaminated. Every single one of them has microbial growth on them. So again, I tell people like it was hidden, it wasn't invasive, it was happy. It was living where it was. It had its food, you know what I'm saying? But like we never saw it in the living spaces. It didn't grow on the sheetrock,
Didn't
on
see
the
it,
inside the wall.
didn't see it, didn't smell it, and didn't pick it up on any microbial growth test.
Right. So Lloyd comes in, he discovers that, and then he says, based on AJ's level of, you know, severity that we were dealing with at the time, like he said, like, I want to make sure we do this right. Like this was a huge, like 2 month process of planning and trying to execute this job to a level of like excellence. So Lloyd said, I want to bring in a building scientist. That building scientist lived in New Orleans. His name was Bill Robinson. Unfortunately, he's going on to be with the Lord in the last couple of years, but Bill Robinson came in and he of course knew exactly what was going on. He was able to explain it to us. It all made sense. And he was able to instruct Lloyd, and we came up with a scope of work that we could get that room done properly, that we were all happy with, and we would feel safe, that our environment would be safe. And he told AJ back then, when he saw the level of work that AJ did with our mechanical system, he said, I've been doing this for over 60 years and I've done it across the entire United States. He says, and I've never seen a level of work like you provided. And he said, you have a gift. And he said, like, when you come out of this, he said, you will have something to give back. And he said, I know you'll have a place in this industry. And of course, at that time, you just kind of like laugh it up, or you just, say, okay. But we never, ever, ever could have dreamt that one, AJ would be fully healed. AJ is now 4 years seizure free.
From an incurable illness, by the way.
Right. Like if you ask any neurological specialist, like they literally say epilepsy is incurable. And he is 4 years seizure free and a walking miracle. And now, right, this has brought us to what we do now, which is building science and advocate for other individuals who are in journeys like we were in.
Yeah, and I think like this whole story full circle, and of course we got the short version because I'm sure it was months and years of this, right? And I think we cannot stress that enough. Like I think a lot of times as a consumer, sometimes you feel a little crazy, right? And I'm sure you guys had those moments where you're like, gosh, are we the problem? Like, you kind of have that like instance where you go down this rabbit hole, right? And I think the stars aligned on this, right? It could have really been a very horrible setback. You could have gone through with the brain surgery only to find out later that it wasn't what you needed. Also,
Yeah.
there's side effects to brain surgery, right? There's side effects to any procedure. And
Right.
that's really hard to weigh too, right? And with Becky and your daughter being healthy, the thought of microbial growth or anything like that, plus you guys had testing done, it was like this is not the problem, right? And I think it's so important to understand if you feel something, consult with those around you. It took a building scientist to come in and a remediator to come in to say, no, you guys actually really do have a problem. And I think the the underlying, tone of this is you can be in a home with your whole family and only one person can be affected.
Yeah.
I've seen other stories that are very similar. One that I saw recently, this young man, he actually lost his sight and just a whole bunch of
Oh,
stuff. And he was the only one affected in his home. And so I think this kind of goes to why you guys feel so passionate and this is so important to you, not just for your day to day, but to help people every single day. So can you kind of elaborate kind of why this took you down this path? I think it's great that there was some foreshadowing here, like, hey, you're going to be able to give back once you're fully functional and healthy again. And, it kind of made me a little teary because I'm like, those are the types of things that really come back to you, right? Like in that moment, it felt like, yeah, okay, one day I'll give back. And maybe your mind was thinking in a different light. But what you guys are doing is actually, like you said, speaking from your truth and what you guys have experienced. And you're so passionate about making sure the people that you guys work with understand what is going on, right? And how, yeah, maybe not all of you are affected, or maybe none of you are affected, but it can actually affect you down the road. So, why is this so important to you, and what made you guys make the decision to kind of go down this path?
Yeah, so I'm going to let AJ elaborate more because, right, I mean, he has a totally, his unique perspective because he was the one that experienced it. But to your point, Kayla, like I get calls on a weekly basis from, women crying or individuals crying because either they're having the things, the side effects happening to them, or they're witnessing it in their children, or, another family member. We're currently walking alongside a brother and a sister. So it's a sister who's experiencing symptoms, and she's pretty bad off. And her brother, he has been so transparent, and he has said, like, I don't understand. I don't fully understand what she's experiencing, but like he wants to understand. And he grew up with her, so he knows that this is not normal. This is not inside of her typical character. And right, like I tell these individuals all the time, you are not crazy. You didn't make this up. What you're experiencing is real, but I always caveat it as like there don't lose hope. Like there's always healing is available if we can get you in a clean environment and you do the work that it takes to get your foundation, your body, physical, body foundation, not a building foundation. When you get it in order, healing is possible. And we're going to partner that also with a healthy environment. And so, right, I tell people all the time, you are not crazy. And AJ, he like, of course, right, he deals with this as well. And a lot of times he'll tell wives because unfortunately, they're the ones having the symptoms, and then the husbands don't want to believe, or the other partner doesn't want to believe. And he says, like, I want them to tell me I'm crazy. Part of it's a double-edged sword. Like, obviously, like the beauty of the situation is that AJ is better and he's well, but at the times too, like some people again don't understand that the person you're talking to now is not the person he was 4 years ago. I mean, he is a completely different person because back then he was falling out with seizures and couldn't, communicate or remember. So again, like you're seeing a fully recovered individual, but he experienced this, so he can talk firsthand and tell these men, like other men, like, you're not going to tell me what I experienced was fake. Yeah. Because it was very real. So he definitely goes to bat for those individuals.
So back up a notch. Excuse me. As a mechanical person, it is always my job to figure out the root cause of everything, right? I want to figure out what caused it, come up with a scope of work so it does not reoccur. So throughout the whole process, typical Western medicine doesn't get to the root cause of anything. They treat symptoms, right? They throw drugs at you and hope for the best, and then you deal with the side effects, and then before you know it, you're on 15 different drugs, and nobody knows what's going on. So throughout the whole process, I'm trying to figure out, okay, what's the root cause here? And that's when we came across Dr. Joe and we figured out, okay, the root cause is the microbial growth exposure. So I take that and apply it to a house. Okay, microbial growth is a symptom. Okay,
Yeah.
what is it a symptom of? We don't have a microbial growth problem, we have a moisture problem. And let's figure out what, once again, the moisture is a symptom. So what's causing the moisture problem? If it's not something obvious like a bulk water leak, a roof leak, or a window or something like that, it's a building science anomaly. And we have to go in and we have to use some critical thinking skills and some common sense, believe it or not. It's not difficult. One of our mentors, Dr. Joe Stiebrick, says it's not rocket science, it's building science. It's basic fundamental things. And we live in a hot, humid climate where the moisture drive is always to the inside. And it wreaks havoc on homes because general contractors are so ignorant to it, it's unbelievable. HVAC contractors, as an HVAC contractor, it is our job to control the indoor environment. We have a saying, the HVAC contractor has more of an effect on your health than your own doctor does. And the HVAC contractors do not grasp that. They can't grasp it. So they go in, and I was there. I lived it. You have 10 calls in a day, you go in, fix the unit, and move on when
Right.
there's so many other issues there, underlying issues. Like I said earlier, every single unit I've ever opened in 25 years has some level of microbial growth, and that was normal. Button it back up and move on to the next one.
Right.
Now, excuse me, you're gonna have to edit that out. Um, Now moving forward, no, it's not. It's typical, it's normal, but it's unacceptable.
Right.
And the building science part of it, you figure out why. What's the cause of this? And most of the time, it's ignorance or incompetence. And it's an I don't care attitude. It's let's get this done because we're the cheapest bidder and we need to move on to the next job. And they don't realize the negative implications of that, not only on the structure, but the people that live in the house. Infinitely more important, the health of the people that live in the house.
So, like Kayla, like you mentioned before, so we really want to begin to target the consumer, the individual
Yeah.
who occupies the building. And that's any building. That could be your home, whether you own it and or rent it, an apartment, and or where you work. You know, a lot of people, their house is fine, but they're exposed in the office, which again can be detrimental. So I've now gone on staff with Change the Air Foundation. And so any viewers, if they need any resources, they can go to changetheairfoundation.org. You can subscribe to our newsletter, and you can get this type of information put right in your inbox on a weekly basis. So again, we're like-minded individuals with R&R in that we want the consumer to be educated and be empowered. So I had a recent conversation with a colleague of mine who's in the dehumidification world, and she works for a manufacturer, but she's all about, like, she has the same passion that we have for better indoor air quality. And like she said, it should almost, we need to have regulation for, is it vented or unvented crawl spaces? Nikki, say it.
Unvented.
So we need to have unvented crawl spaces, again, in hot, humid climates. And essentially this should be a must, because when we're venting them, we're literally setting the occupant up for failure. So imagine we lived in a dream world where you have an empowered homeowner who is in the process of building a house, and they go through not only their GC, but 10 other contractors, and they refuse to allow that contractor to make a vented crawl space. Like, that would be forcing contractors to learn why and or to do things different. Like, this is exactly what we want. We want to live in a place where, again, you just have to know what you don't know. It is okay if you don't know, but you need to go in your little old school, Rolodex, and you need to look under the building scientist, and you need to call upon that person who does know. Because again, unless you're affected, sometimes what we run into is, unless the contractor or somebody in his family is directly affected, sometimes they don't understand it, and they do think like, oh, this, I've never dealt with this, or I've never had a problem. They just don't know, because by the time that their client has experienced the problem, they're not calling them back. So no matter what, the problems exist if you're hearing about them or not. And so one of two things, like, right, we need consumers who are demanding better and who are empowered and educated. Again, just a little bit. They just need to know a little bit to know this is wrong. And then they need to know, okay, we need to call these particular types of individuals or people because they know how to get this right.
Yeah, and I think that's really important, right? Telling the whole story and understanding, right? Because you guys were a consumer. And not only that, AJ was a professional in the HVAC world who actually does control the indoor environment. But again, it's the lack
At least
thereof.
I thought
Go
I
ahead.
was. I thought I was controlling the indoor environment.
Well, and I think that's the thing. A lot of people think that they're doing the right thing. And it's not because they know, it's because they don't know. And I think you said this best,
Exactly.
Becky. Like, if you don't know, you don't know. It's okay. Ask questions.
Yeah.
I think that's the importance of understanding every single trade that is controlling the building envelope, if you will, right? Because we all affect one another. It does affect your indoor air quality. Again, going back to what we talked about, hey, a plumber coming in, drilling a hole, I mean, that could set off a whole plethora of things. And I think that
Right.
it's so important for us to understand. And that's why, when we connected, I really wanted to talk about your guys' story because our industries are really unique, right? HVAC, restoration, remediation, cleaning. You don't just grow up and say, I'm going to do this. I can't wait to do it. You're usually raised around it. You fall
Yeah.
into it, or like your guys' instance, AJ happened to go into HVAC because of your father, but now you guys have pivoted to a different trade because of your experience. And I think that is so important when we're talking to consumers because it's not, hey, I'm the professional, I'm telling you. It's, hey, yes, I am the professional, but I also live this and I'm telling you it's a
Right.
problem. But there's a solution
Exactly.
for this problem, right? Because a lot of times homeowners think and see problem, oh my gosh, that means money. But if it comes down to explaining it's your health, this money actually gives you longevity, essentially, I think it changes the consumer's mindset. So, with all of that being said, you guys are doing the Lord's work, clearly. And what can we do, not only as R&R, but the industry as a whole, to make sure that our consumers are understanding, building science and what they're being exposed to, whether it is, like you said, in their home or even in their work environment. How can we help spread awareness? I know this is one way, but maybe it's connecting the dots. I don't know. I'd love for you guys to elaborate on that.
So, in my opinion, if you're a professional in the industry, you need to continue to educate yourself. Lose the arrogant attitude of I've been doing this for 30 years and I've never had a problem. I see it constantly and I want to punch them in the throat and tell them, let's go look at your last three houses and I'll show you all the problems you're not having. The issue there is you're having the issues, but it's normal. It's
Yeah,
normal to have a little bit of microbial
that's
growth
good.
around your registers. It's normal to have a little bit of condensation here and there. It's normal for your AC system in the attic to be sweating and have a bunch of microbial growth on it. When no, that's not,
Right.
it's normal, but it's unacceptable. So continue to educate yourself, lose the I know everything attitude, understand everything you do is going to have some sort of an effect, better or worse. Try to look ahead and say, okay, if I do this, what are the implications of this down the road? And what I mean by that, I see I'll follow up behind a lot of remediators where they'll go in and remediate the master bathroom. And then 6 months later, the microbial growth moved to the kitchen. They'll go in, remediate the kitchen. 6 months later, it moves to the utility room. They never try to understand, okay, why is this taking place? What is going on? So educate yourself. If I understand, stay in your lane. Like if you're a professional HVAC guy, and stay in your lane. That's what you like to do. That's fine. But understand the importance of it and say, have someone in pocket that you can call. Someone like myself that you can call on and say, hey, I'm having this issue. Help me out. Let's figure it out so we can build back better and not have this issue reoccur for our clients. If you're
I'm sorry, I was going to interject there. So, one thing that we've seen a difference in the group of professional individuals in the building science realm versus when we weren't building science minded is that we all want to share and support one
Yeah.
another. Like before, like it literally has been said to us before, like, oh, I can't share that. Like that's my little, industry trade secret. Like they don't share information, how they might install whatever, or, when you're building something. Like each individual, and again, understandably, they want to keep what they think is their trade secret to themselves versus a collaborative type of attitude. And we see that in the building science world. Again, like the pioneers like Joe Seabrick, John Tooley, Gary Nelson, all of these individuals who we like consider our mentors and have relationships with, they tell us all the time, like, please, please, please ask us questions, reach out to us, utilize the resources that we're giving you all, because some of these individuals are 80 plus years old and they say, like, when we go, this information is going to go with us. And so we must share it. It's an attitude like, hey, let's work together because I want you to do better. And when we know better, we do better. It's a choice that we make. You know what I'm saying? We're making the choice that, okay, when I do know better, I am going to do better. So again, right, you don't have to become a building scientist, but at least know that you need to call upon one maybe at some point.
Yeah. I always tell my clients this. What's the number one point of litigation in construction? It's moisture. 90% of all litigation has something to do with moisture. So one would think, as a general contractor, I am a general contractor as well, it is my job to control moisture in this house at all costs. That is my number one goal. If I can't control a roof leak or a plumbing leak or windows, if I can't flash windows properly, I have no business building a house, period. And as an HVAC contractor, which I consider myself an elite HVAC contractor, it is my job to control the air in this house. A major part of that is to control the moisture in the air. If I can't control the moisture in the air, I don't care how comfortable you are. If I can't control the moisture in this house, nothing else matters. I failed, and I failed my clients. I failed my clients' home, period. Understand what you're doing, understand the role, understand the process. There's a process to an AC system. You don't just call a contractor, have them come in and put a system in. There's a process to it. It's critical, the process. And unfortunately, most contractors don't even know the process. They can't explain the process to you, but they're coming in and doing a $30,000 AC system for you.
So I'm going to put in another plug here for Change the Air Foundation. So in terms of speaking to our consumers, Change the Air Foundation this year, 2025, in the fall, we are launching an HVAC mini class series. And so this series is not geared to professionals. This series is geared to homeowners and or these individuals who are negatively impacted by toxic environments. So we're literally going to have the best of the best in the HVAC world speaking and teaching in layman's terms for our homeowners and our consumers to understand this HVAC process that AJ just mentioned. So again, you can go on our website, changetheairfoundation.org, subscribe to our newsletter, and you'll be in the first, notifications of when this mini class series launches in the fall. So in terms of we talked about the professional and what they can do to know better and do better. In terms of consumers, again, now that we live kind of in a YouTube world, there are tons and tons and tons of access out there to
the resources
professionals, right, who are building better. Matt Reisinger and the Build Show Live crew. Again, we're not on their platform, but again, they're colleagues of ours, they're mentors, there are people who we look up to who we know are doing things correctly, and they're informing the consumer. Again, places like Change the Air Foundation, who the whole mission is to inform the consumer on how things can and should be done better and the reason why. That's the importance, as the reason why we're doing these things the way we're doing them.
If you don't understand why you're doing what you're doing, you're going to have a tendency to cut corners and not do it as effective as it needs to be. And when you talk building science, HVAC, quality of execution is critical. It is critical. It is the most important thing. If you do a bad job installing or executing any aspect of it, you failed.
And this is where, again, it's kind of the foundation of our lives and of our business. Like, it's on all of AJ's business materials, Colossians 3:23, and that's what he stands upon. I'll let him tell it to you.
Colossians 3:23. So I live my life by two principles. Number one is Colossians 3:23, do all things as done unto Christ and not man. All things means all things. KISS, keep it super simple. It's not complicated. Builders complain it's too hard, it's too difficult, it's too expensive. No, it's not. You just have to care. You just have to understand what you're doing and why you're doing what you're doing. the professionals need to up their game, to say the least. From a homeowner, an end consumer perspective, don't trust anyone. And I stress that, drill that into your head. Do not hire a contractor that is highly recommended, that has 100 five-star reviews on Google, and think you're okay and you're going to get what you're supposed to get. It is a blatant lie. Do not trust anyone. Do not trust a contractor. Do not trust an inspector. Don't trust me. I want my homeowners, I want them to be educated enough to know the nonsense when they hear it, because they
Right.
will hear it.
Yeah.
It is easy for a contractor to come in and talk the talk
Yeah.
and get a $30,000 check from you to put in an AC system, and you think, oh, good, I've gotten a professional. 2 years later, you have to call someone like me because you're extremely sick in the house because the HVAC contractor failed. Take that a step further. I see this constantly and it drives me up the wall. I have consumers, wealthy people, that hire a custom home builder and expect they're getting a custom built home, that every single part of that house is done properly. The fact of the matter, it's not. It's not. I tell my clients, in 25 years in the industry, I have not come across one, and I'm not kidding, not one house in our area that is built to minimum code. Let that sink in. Minimum code is the floor, and we can't hit the floor, much less exceed it. When we're talking building science and building performance, healthy, high performance homes, you have to exceed code.
Yeah.
Minimum code is pitiful. It is a pitiful metric. So I tell my contractors, even if you hit minimum code, I feel like you shot for the ditch and you hit it. I try to get them to understand, let's shoot for the stars, and if we hit the moon, we did spectacular.
Yeah, to have big goals and big care, honestly, enormous care. Like you said, KISS. I think it's keep it simple, stupid, but now I'm gonna
I
roll with
can't
your
I
version
can't
of
call people
KISS.
stupid though.
But yeah, but I mean, that's like that's what we've grown up on, right? Like just
Yeah,
keep it
Right.
simple. And I think that that's key because to your point, no one is stupid, if I'm being quite honest. You just don't know and you just need to ask the questions, right? So I
yeah,
think the overarching thing here, not just about the building science and the envelope and a healthy environment, it's education, asking questions,
yeah,
collaborating across all trades. If you don't know the answer or that's not your realm, it's okay. Call on somebody who you can trust. And if it's not somebody you know, maybe your connections know of somebody. You have two people
yeah,
here sitting on Ask the Expert who are more than willing to connect you with whoever you need to connect with. Same here. If I don't know the answer, I have a network that I can reach out to. And I think this is what it's all about, right?
exactly.
Your journey has
Yes.
led you here. Our paths have crossed for a reason. And I think that, with Change the Air actually hosting these HVAC, you said micro courses, or
Mini class series.
mini
Yeah.
classes. Mini class series is huge because for all of you listening, I'm sure there will be a press release or an event and we'll share it with you, right? This is the opportunity to connect with the community that you serve day in and day out and help them understand what they should be looking for. Maybe the questions that they have are valid. They just haven't asked because, well, they don't want to ask them. And I think this is what our profession is for. We're supposed to collaborate, we're supposed to connect, but we're also supposed to spread awareness, education, and just keep evolving with one another. So, thank you so much, Becky and AJ. I really appreciate it. I can't wait to see you guys in the future and work on some more stuff. If there's anything that you guys have questions about, please feel free to reach out to Becky and AJ or Change the Air Foundation or myself, and I can connect you with them. But as always, everybody, we will see you on the next episode of Ask the Expert. Take care.